Ethan's first morning at Greystone Consulting began like any other first day, with a mixture of excitement and nerves twisting in his stomach. He adjusted his tie for the fifth time in the reflection of the polished lobby glass, reminding himself that he was qualified, capable, and ready. Yet, as he stepped through the revolving doors, a subtle unease settled over him, one that no amount of pep talk could shake. The office buzzed with quiet efficiency, employees typing, talking, and moving with purpose. A young woman with a warm smile approached him, extending a hand. "Hi. You must be Ethan. I'm Clara. I'll show you around." Her easy friendliness helped dissolve some of his tension, and he followed her through the maze of cubicles and conference rooms, each more modern than the last. Clara introduced him to a few colleagues, all polite, some curious, some indifferent. Ethan tried to remember every name, every face, but it felt like drinking from a fire hose. Despite the whirlwind of introductions, one person seemed almost unreachable, an enigmatic presence he couldn't ignore. "Your chief will meet you shortly," Clara said, her voice tinged with a subtle amusement, as if she knew something Ethan didn't. She guided him down a quiet corridor lined with framed awards and photos of the company's major accomplishments. At the end of the hall stood Chief Marcus, a man whose very presence seemed to command the space. Marcus was tall, impeccably dressed, with a calm authority that made Ethan's heart race in an entirely unexpected way. Their eyes met briefly, and Ethan felt the intensity of that gaze linger longer than appropriate. It wasn't just professional scrutiny, it was something else, something that made Ethan swallow hard and shift on his feet. "Ethan, welcome to Greystone," Marcus said, his voice smooth but carrying a subtle weight that made Ethan pay attention to every word. "I've heard good things about your experience." There was a pause, a glance that seemed to measure more than skill or resume, and Ethan felt an inexplicable thrill. The morning passed in a blur of orientation and paperwork, yet Ethan found his thoughts drifting back to Marcus. Each time he caught a glimpse of the chief in the distance, or when their paths crossed briefly in the hallway, Ethan felt a rush of curiosity mixed with a hesitant desire he didn't quite understand. He scolded himself internally. This was a professional environment, nothing more, but the sensation refused to dissipate. Lunch came, and Ethan joined a few colleagues in the cafeteria. Conversation flowed easily, though he found himself zoning out at times, replaying moments from the morning, the way Marcus's hand had brushed a stack of papers when passing him, the subtle lift of an eyebrow as he asked a pointed question, the brief, knowing smile that seemed to linger just a second too long. Ethan shook his head, trying to focus on the present, yet his heart stubbornly reminded him of Marcus's attention. Afternoon meetings were routine, filled with charts, projections, and client briefings. Yet, amid the business jargon, Ethan couldn't help noticing Marcus watching him, occasionally offering guidance or correcting a minor mistake. There was a professionalism in his critique, yes, but also a gentleness that made Ethan's pulse quicken. He began to understand that Marcus's attention was not casual, it was deliberate, focused, and personal in a way that left Ethan both flustered and intrigued. By the end of the day, Ethan felt exhausted yet oddly exhilarated. As he gathered his things, Marcus approached him briefly at his desk. "Good work today, Ethan. You'll do well here," he said. There was a subtle warmth in his tone, a softness beneath the formality, and his gaze held Ethan's just a moment longer than necessary. That look, intense, curious, and faintly amused, lingered in Ethan's mind long after he left the office. Walking back to his apartment, Ethan replayed the day over and over. He reminded himself that this was just the first day, that he needed to focus on his work, and that he couldn't read too much into a glance. Yet, deep down, he knew something had shifted, something delicate and electric had sparked, and he could not ignore it. The chief's look stayed with him, haunting yet exhilarating, leaving Ethan with a sense of anticipation he hadn't expected. The first day was over, but for Ethan, the story was only beginning. The following week, Ethan found himself settled into the rhythm of Greystone Consulting, but no routine could settle the persistent tug of curiosity that Marcus's look had ignited. Each morning, as he passed the chief's office, he felt a subtle thrill at the possibility of interaction, though he tried to push the thought away, reminding himself that professionalism must come first. Their paths crossed more often than Ethan had expected. Marcus, it seemed, had a way of appearing at just the right moment, offering guidance or a word of encouragement. Ethan noticed it first during a client presentation, when he fumbled a line of data. Marcus stepped in smoothly, correcting the minor error without embarrassing him, then gave a brief, approving nod. That simple gesture sent a rush of warmth through Ethan, leaving him momentarily distracted as he tried to regain his composure. Lunches became a curious experiment in human connection. On one occasion, Marcus suggested they grab a quick bite together while reviewing a project outline. Sitting across from him in the small, sunlit cafe, Ethan was struck by the effortless way Marcus commanded attention, not through intimidation, but through presence. The chief's gaze was steady, assessing, yet never harsh, and Ethan found himself hungering for the subtle exchanges of smiles and glances that seemed to pass between them like silent conversation. One afternoon, Marcus invited Ethan to stay late to finish a particularly complicated report. The office emptied around them, leaving only the hum of computers and the soft ticking of the wall clock. The proximity felt electric. Marcus offered guidance with an ease that was both professional and intimate, his hand brushing Ethan's shoulder lightly as he pointed to a section of the report. Ethan's breath caught, and he immediately looked away, heart hammering, yet he couldn't ignore the warmth that lingered. In the quiet of the evening, conversation drifted beyond work. Marcus shared small stories from his life, childhood memories, favorite books, and a passion for painting. Ethan listened, fascinated, sensing layers beneath the chief's composed exterior. He realized that Marcus's attentiveness was genuine, not performative. There was something profoundly human and relatable beneath the authority, and Ethan felt drawn to it, his curiosity transforming into something more potent, more personal. Ethan struggled with the intensity of his feelings. Part of him worried that he was reading too much into harmless gestures, that a professional environment should remain strictly professional. Yet another part, one he dared not acknowledge openly, thrived on the attention, the subtle play of proximity and conversation, the private jokes and knowing looks. Every interaction seemed charged, even the most mundane, and Ethan found himself analyzing each word, each glance, each smile. One evening, as they wrapped up their work, Marcus lingered by Ethan's desk longer than necessary. "You're doing well," he said, his tone carrying a warmth that made Ethan's chest tighten. "I see potential here, more than you realize." The words themselves were innocent enough, but the underlying weight, the quiet intensity in Marcus's eyes, left Ethan disoriented in a way he hadn't anticipated. The next few days were a blur of mixed emotions. Ethan became acutely aware of Marcus's subtle attention, a brief touch on the arm during discussion, a glance that lingered, the faintest curve of a smile when Ethan made a witty remark. Each gesture seemed inconsequential to anyone else, yet to Ethan, they were profound, magnetic, and confusing all at once. By the end of the week, Ethan recognized a growing tension he could no longer ignore. The attraction was mutual, he realized, though unspoken, undefined, hovering just beneath the surface. The office had become a stage for an unacknowledged connection, charged with excitement, curiosity, and a hint of danger. Ethan's mind raced with questions, with possibilities, with fear and desire intertwining in a way that made concentration difficult and anticipation irresistible. As he left the office that evening, Ethan replayed the moments of the week in his head, each memory sharper, more vivid. Marcus's look, so subtle yet so deliberate, haunted him, leaving him on edge and hungry for the next encounter. The professional walls between them seemed thinner, the rules more fragile, and Ethan couldn't help but wonder, how far would this connection go? The first spark had grown into a quiet, simmering flame, and Ethan knew that the next step, whatever it might be, could change everything. The next Monday, the office felt heavier somehow, charged with an unspoken energy. Ethan arrived early, hoping to focus on work, but the memory of Marcus's gaze all week had left him restless. Every step through the quiet corridors made his heart race. He kept reminding himself that professionalism was paramount, yet he could not ignore the flutter of anticipation when he glimpsed Marcus in the distance. Mid-morning, a project meeting drew Ethan and Marcus together once again. As Marcus explained the details to the team, his eyes flicked to Ethan more than once. Each glance lingered, unspoken yet intimate, as if Marcus were measuring more than just Ethan's understanding of the project. Ethan felt the magnetic pull of those eyes and struggled to maintain composure, acutely aware of every word, every gesture, every pause. Later, Marcus asked Ethan to stay behind after the meeting to clarify some details on a report. The office emptied around them, leaving only the hum of the air conditioning and the soft click of keyboards. Marcus leaned over the desk, pointing to a chart, and Ethan felt the warmth of his hand brush against his own. His chest tightened. He pulled back slightly, a mix of fear and curiosity swirling within him. Marcus noticed the hesitation but did not comment, only offering a reassuring smile that sent a shiver down Ethan's spine. The conversation drifted from business to lighter topics, and for a moment, the professional walls seemed to dissolve. Marcus spoke about his childhood dreams, his love of music, and the occasional loneliness of leadership. Ethan listened, fascinated by the glimpse into the man behind the authority. He realized that Marcus's attention was not mere flirtation, it carried depth, vulnerability, and a genuine interest in him as a person. Ethan's mind raced with questions he had never anticipated. Was this attraction real? Was it reciprocated? Was he risking everything by allowing himself to feel it? The rational part of him warned against crossing any boundaries, yet the emotional part, the part that longed for connection and understanding, was insistent. He felt torn between desire and duty, curiosity and caution. As the evening light faded through the office windows, Marcus leaned closer, his tone soft but firm. Ethan, I appreciate your dedication. You have more potential than you realize, and I want to see you succeed. The words were professional, but the way Marcus looked at him, so deliberate, so piercing, left no room for doubt that there was something personal woven between the lines. Ethan's pulse quickened. The office felt smaller, the air warmer. He wanted to reach out, to bridge the gap, but fear anchored him in place. Marcus, sensing the hesitation, offered a subtle nod, an invitation that lingered just beyond the realm of certainty. It was a test, a moment suspended in time, and Ethan had to decide whether to step forward or step back. After a long pause, Ethan chose neither fully, instead allowing the moment to exist in quiet tension. He smiled, a mixture of nervousness and longing, and nodded in acknowledgement. Marcus returned the gesture with a faint, knowing smile, and for a brief moment, the world outside the office seemed to disappear. The air between them was thick with possibilities, and Ethan realized that the path ahead was uncertain, fraught with temptation, yet irresistible. As Ethan packed his things at the end of the day, he reflected on the week, the stolen glances, the subtle touches, the weight of Marcus's attention. He knew that what he felt went beyond admiration or professional respect. It was something electric, something dangerous, and something profoundly real. The first spark of attraction had grown into a quiet, consuming fire, and he sensed that the next encounter could change everything. Stepping out into the cool evening air, Ethan's mind replayed the day's interactions. Marcus's look lingered in his thoughts, the intensity, the curiosity, the unspoken invitation. He walked home with a mixture of excitement and apprehension, aware that the story of his first week was only the beginning. A choice loomed on the horizon, and with it, the consequences of desire, risk, and self-discovery. Ethan knew one thing for certain: he could not ignore the pull between them, and whatever happened next would test not only his heart but his understanding of who he was, and what he was willing to risk for connection.